Did you know 1 in 2 women wear the wrong foundation? Matching foundation is hard, but Il Maquillage makes it easy. Take the Power Match quiz to find a perfect match in seconds, customized to your unique skin tone, undertone, and coverage needs. With 600,000 5-star reviews, Woke Up Like This is our best-selling foundation for a reason. Available in 50 shades of weightless natural coverage. And with Try Before You Buy, you can try your full size at home for 14 days. Just pay shipping. Take the quiz at ilmaquillage.com/quiz. That's ILMAKIAGE.com/quiz.
Getting engaged can be stressful. Getting the right ring won't be at BlueNile.com. The jewelers at BlueNile.com have sparkle down to a science with beautiful lab-grown diamonds worthy of your most brilliant moments. Their lab-grown diamonds are independently graded and guaranteed identical to natural diamonds and ready to ship to your door. Get $50 off your purchase of $500 or more with code LISTEN at BlueNile.com. That's BlueNile.com, code LISTEN for $50 off.
Hi there, it's your vagina speaking. I know sometimes I have a hard time hitting there when we get down, but OMG Cream from Wisp is here to help. The instant arousal makes it easier to, push. It takes 2 minutes to order online, so let's give it a try. OMG. I literally just went to heaven. I'm gonna try that again. Go tell your friends though, get on Wisp. Order OMG Cream online at hellowisp.com. That's hello, WISP.com, and have it delivered for free. Use code OMG for 15% off your first order.
Changing Times, the Allenwood Conversations.
Sponsored by the Meadowlands Hotel in Tralee.
To put it bluntly, I would have been regarded as a dunce. And I had 2 suitcases, no place to stay, couldn't afford a place to stay, and then we ran out of money for food. So the last 3 days, no food.
Before Eppie was born, you met your wife, and she is the daughter of Terry Keane, and it was through Terry that you met her, wasn't it?
Yes.
You've described Terry, I read somewhere, as rocket fuel.
She was a remarkable person, and I look forward to the day when the proper story is told.
You could almost burst into song, couldn't you, Mary? Everything is coming up in full bloom. The days are longer. There's a lightness, there's a sense of renewal and creativity in the air. Do you want to give us a verse and a chorus of "Oh, What a Beautiful Morning"?
You're so right, Mary. I mean, it is. I love this time of year. I love the springtime. I love it. Nature just seems to be at its most reassuring to us. Magical. The outdoors just seem to say, come on now, get the coat on, get the boots on and get out there. Or more importantly, take the trowel and get out into that garden. So there's something about this season, isn't it, that just invites us to make a slight change in our lives, to make it more outdoorsy. And more importantly, just to be grateful for the beauty that we have in this country.
That's true.
And the beauty we can create.
Yeah, because when you talk about beauty and creativity, actually, our guest today is someone who has dedicated his life to transforming outdoor spaces into something beautiful, creative, and absolutely extraordinary. He's not just a garden designer, he's an artist, an innovator, and someone who has shown us that gardens can be, that they can kind of be bold, surprising, and very magical.
Certainly he's very challenging.
Yeah.
That is for sure. To people who are not natural gardeners, he's a very challenging person, but a wonderful person, right from his early days in Rathfarnham to his award-winning designs that have won world renown for him and for Ireland. He's a man who just constantly reimagines what's possible in garden design, says she who has difficulty just growing daffodils. He's daring, he's imaginative, he has just a wonderful knack of turning something ordinary into the extraordinary.
Yeah, and we're absolutely delighted to have with us in Changing Times studio today the one and only Diarmuid Gavin. Diarmuid, you're very, very welcome to Allenwood.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to be here, and thank you for that kind introduction.
It's true.
And thank God you didn't land with Wellington boots and a trowel.
We might have to work.
Always in the car.
We might have to work.
I imagine.
I'm just sorry that this isn't live because I know we'd be inundated with people phoning in with their queries
that's
about
right,
wouldn't we?
Exactly, we would, yeah. We
We
would,
have
for
lists
sure.
for you afterwards. Anyway.
I'd say it must be like being a doctor. Everywhere you go, somebody wants
people
you.
have issues.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's
Would you have a look at my leg?
Would you have a look at me? Yeah, would you have a look at my trees? Yeah.
Hydrangeas. That's in Ireland, hydrangeas are the big thing.
They're the big one, aren't they? Well, listen, tell us how do you become not just a passionate gardener? How do you make gardening your profession, your life? How did that happen?
There was probably no other option. I grew up in Rathfarnham, South County Dublin. I loved the escape of the outdoors. There was a kind of magical park very near us called Bushy Park, which was a wonderful park. Wonderful the ancestral home of the George Bernard Shaw family, I think. And in that park, it used to be, at some stage, a grand garden, but there was a woodland, or there is a woodland, and a big lake, and bamboos growing around the lake, and Gothic follies and all that. So that used to be my kind of Mark Twain play area, where I probably alone would get lost in the place and in my imagination. So I wasn't good academically, or I wasn't perceived as being good academically or in school, so it was always going to be something creative I would do. And by the time it came to leaving school, it was either actually three things: potter, chef, or gardener. And I started off chefing.
All creative. All creative.
And all very similar in ways, and all involving the soil.
How did you choose chefing, first of all?
Because a job came up in a restaurant in Temple Bar, a place called Coffers of Temple Bar. This was before Temple Bar is what it is now. And I went for it, and I started as a commis chef, and I was about to start doing my training. So I was there for 3 or 4 months, and I loved every moment of it, every second of it I loved. It was high pressure, go in the afternoon, work till 2 or 3 in the morning, and just loved it, loved the creativity, loved the daringness, loved the fact that it was owned by 2 gay lads, and it was very cosmopolitan, and there was pictures of nude women on the walls, and I dreaded my parents ever coming in at this place. But it seemed to be a different Dublin. And then a job came up in a garden shop called Mackie's Seeds.
Yeah.
And in an instant, I decided, no, that's my life. And I went and I worked with the idea of working in Mackie's for a year, stayed there for 3 years, and then I went to study in the Botanic Gardens, and that was that.
And did you do the garden at home? Like, were your parents into gardening?
No, my parents, yes and no. They were into gardening in a conformist way, so having the same garden as everybody else, making a suburban garden kind of pretty in a suburban way, not daring to be different.
Roses and wallflowers. Yeah.
Kind of. Well, if they were posh, there would have been roses. So it was twee little alpine plants, and gardening in the suburb. I remember them making that first garden, my dad and my Uncle Chris and whatever, and I couldn't wait I was a tiny kid when we moved into the house, and looking out from the net curtains upstairs and waiting to see what they were going to do, because
well, you were interested even back then.
Even back then, changing space and whatever. But gardening was, I think, growing up in suburban Dublin, a kind of moral thing. You must keep your place looking nice. And it was like, I'm sure if you were in a street in Belfast scrubbing the front step or something like that, it was all about
Monday get the step scrubbed and waxed and looking good.
So gardening wasn't a place for our type of class in Dublin. It wasn't a place of creativity for us anyway, who didn't understand gardening heritage or growing plants. So that's the sort of tradition I grew up with.
It was also hardly a place even where you would sit in. You would cut the grass, you would do the weeding, but you wouldn't actually sit out and enjoy it. It was weird. That's the way it was in my family anyway.
That's right. You wouldn't. And you would look at pictures of Victorian gardeners dressed up to the nines outside their big fancy houses, but dressed up to the nines, staring into the camera. There weren't spaces for enjoyment. And yet they were the biggest space you had available to you in your home. Yeah. But they were, for me, they were very much a job. But early on, I knew that there was something else, and I could do something with that space. So,
and it was about the growing.
Yeah, about the growing, and also about the magic of design.
Something different.
And about feelings, about making people feel different things.
At the very beginning, whenever you made that choice, what was your parents' attitude?
They were happy. I suppose, to put it bluntly, I would have been regarded as a dunce.
Oh, no.
Yeah. and much
Talking
loved
about
dance.
academically now.
But academically was all important to my parents.
Yes.
They were people who, from kind of inner city Dublin, who really strove to give their family something, and I was kind of tearing up all the opportunity, and anything that I would take an interest in would have been happy. I do remember being told you'll end up as a street cleaner. Nothing wrong with being a street cleaner, but that was their ambition for me. And all the rest of the siblings were doing all fine in school and college and everything like that. But nothing was expected of me. So to have any interest in anything,
they would encourage,
was a better thing. Yeah.
And did you hate school, therefore, Diarmuid?
I hated it every day.
Did you?
Every day.
Awful to be going in under those circumstances.
Awful.
Isn't it?
Yeah, and every school, and changed.
Primary school, national school, and second level, were they all the same?
All the same.
Misery.
Misery. Yeah, nothing more than misery. Yeah.
Did you ever meet a teacher that you thought, oh, there's a decent person now I could?
Yeah, I met an art teacher in the final school. There was a PE teacher. There was an English teacher. There was even a religious teacher, because I could spoof in those sort of areas, and I could kind of be myself. Funnily enough, though, so it was misery. Every day of it was misery. Of every kind of school, but I never felt what other people were imposing on me. I never felt as if I was stupid, or I never. I don't you worry was kind of my thing.
And it can't have helped that you have described yourself as a young boy as being shy to the point almost of paranoia.
Yes.
That must have been another factor to add in.
Well into adulthood. So not only until I was about 40, I suppose, that if I walked down the street and felt people were looking at me just bright red all the time, social interaction, going to parties as a 18, 19, 20-year-old, hell. So I'd go into I'd maybe arrive at a place in a car full of people who I was secure with, go into a party with people I didn't know, and 5 minutes later, slip out, sit in the car for 3, 4, 5 hours.
Wow.
Do you realise how shocking that is for someone like us to hear that? You're on television, you are in command.
Yes.
And not only are you in command, you don't give any impression at all of being shy.
Yeah.
You're in your element, you're in your own place, you own it.
Yeah.
And it's from communication. Every one of us feels that we could meet you on the street incidentally and say, "How are you, Diarmuid?" Because we know you, and we know you to be a really great communicator. How does that happen?
I don't know, but it's a terrible inhibitor in terms of life experience, in terms of potential possibility. I remember 9/11, the day after, as everybody remember where I was 9/11, but the day after I was flying to Seoul in South Korea to film something, and for 3 or 4 days. And after the 3 or 4 days, the crew were flying back, and I had another day or two. I stayed in my hotel room for 2 days without coming out, because I was scared of the world. And that, I wasn't young then. And I was, big BBC shows and everything like that. I was scared.
So you could compartmentalise that when you were doing television work?
When I was working, absolutely no problem. No problem. When I could go out in front of a crowd of 3,000 people and talk to them about my subject. No, and I could entertain them, and I could have them laughing and crying.
Yeah.
But one-to-one, or
the intimacy was difficult.
Or even maybe going to parties with just in making her promise not to leave my side for a minute, even to go to the loo, not for a minute, because I'd go and I'd wait outside wherever the loo was and whatever. So that was a great inhibitor. So everything was happening inside the head and the imagination.
I just wondered, here's me playing the amateur psychologist now, but I look, because from the point of view of a viewer, you are Mr. Personality, Mr. Extraordinary Communicator and Creative Genius. That's how we see you, right? I just look back on your childhood, and early on in your life, you learned that life can be very, very cruel. And you saw it in front of you being cruel. Does that stay with you, the loss of your wee brother? I'm thinking of Conor, you know.
Yeah, it does stay with you. But and not only Conor, death was always around. There was always, yeah. And especially around Conor's anniversary, there was always somebody dying, or a funeral, or a memorial.
What age was Conor now when he died?
I think Conor was 5.
And you were?
I was 6, and we were born on the same day, a year apart.
Oh my goodness. And you were there when he crossed the road, weren't you?
So his birthday's your birthday, your birthday's his birthday, right?
Yeah, there's 2 of us born on the 10th of May, 2 of us born on the 8th of May.
In the family.
Yeah.
How do you cope with that? Now, okay, as a 6-year-old, you probably just can't. You don't have the words, and you're comforted by your parents, who are also going through their grief. But it must have continued on, Diarmuid, into your psyche and into your well-being.
You saw Conor being killed, didn't you? You were there when it happened.
Well, I didn't see him being knocked over, but I was there when it happened. We were going to school, and and awful. And Mum was just out of hospital with she'd had jaundice, and not long before that she'd had a baby, and my little sister Emer, and so it was definitely a challenge. But on the other hand, I think, for years and years and years, wrapped up in this, and the family wrapped up in this. But my parents had a job to do, because there was 4 young kids at home, so they had to.
I just wonder, you know, looking back, when something like that happens in a family, I think back to the extraordinary poem about something quite similar.
Oh yeah,
Seamus Heaney's Midterm Break. Where he's called back from boarding school to find out when he arrives home that his younger brother has also been killed in a traffic accident at their front door, more or less. And if you like, that awful line at the end, you know, a 4-foot box, a foot for every year, that just break your heart listening to it. But what was interesting about what he writes there is that everybody, the house is full of people who are obviously commiserating and terribly sad, but the children tend to get overlooked. It's kind of like, oh, well, this won't touch the children. They're resilient. They'll get through it. No need for counselling. Pat them on the head. They'd hardly even say sorry for your troubles, because you're dealing with children. Did you find that you were that children do get overlooked in sorrow?
It was a bit more complex, because Mum and Dad were told that it was me. So, there was the absolute relief that it wasn't me. And I also remember the funeral, and I remember the absolute grief-stricken tragedy of the funeral, but I also remember the collection of 50p pieces that I had from all the uncles.
Really?
And
that's adults' way of showing you they want to
modify
the thing in some way.
To schoolmates, and look what I have, you know, and whatever. I know. So the connection and the disconnection. But I also remember something else. So for years, because I was with Conor, there was an enormous amount of guilt, how I had been as an older brother to him. I used to blame him for everything. And then I remember so many years later, my aunt, who went to live in Billericay in Essex, telling me, Conor was a brat. You weren't the brat. Conor was the brat. A rascal. An absolute. So that settled a huge amount with me. And also the other thing, that I don't want to define Conor the way he passed. He lived for 5 years, and he was a rascal for 5 years.
Thank God he was a rascal.
Yeah.
And thank God he was a rascal, exactly. And he, was born into this family of very industrious parents who were going places, who wanted to give the best to their. So there must have been an awful lot of good.
Your mum is a great age, isn't she? And
she'll be 93 this year.
Force of nature still. She's a great
absolutely a force of nature. Yeah, that's always determined to live.
Yeah.
From the when nobody was doing exercises, she was doing exercises. She survived on this biscuit called cracker wheat and slices of kiwi fruit and grapes, and that's how that was her life.
Kiwi's a superfood.
Whatever superfood there was out there, she'd identify with it and eat like a sparrow would eat. And exercising, when I'd walk into her room, and she'd be in the nip on the floor doing and about her, and she probably still is now. So stoic and strong, and
Yeah.
So how did you get into television then?
in a very unexpected way. So I worked in Mackey's Seeds for 3 brilliant years. I absolutely loved it. Came out of myself to a degree, met people working in the shop from all around the country. That was just amazing. Made friends. Probably for the first time, made friends. After that, I went to study for 3 years in the Botanic Gardens in Glasnevin, and a whole new world opened up of these people, students from all around Ireland, mainly rural country folk, coming to Dublin, living in flatland, made friends. And before I had left college, I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to make gardens that were different.
Yeah.
I was incredibly taken by pop culture, and I'd watch Top of the Pops and I'd watch MTV USA, and I reckoned I wanted to blow up the suburban garden, and I saw no impediment to matching gardening with something new. And also being Irish, realised very early on that we lived in my parents were they loved Britain. So when they married at 59...
Because you were originally born in London.
I was born in London. So from 59 to 64, that they lived in London, and were so ambitious to get back home with a bit of money to buy a house and create a better life. And I didn't see why you shouldn't be allowed intellectually think about gardens. So this was very important for me. Intellectually work out what a garden was. And I didn't see why you had to conform to certain ways of creating gardens. On leaving college, I found out I had an aptitude. I could sell the idea of a garden to somebody posh in Dublin, and I could go and build a garden, and it would be pretty. I could go to one of the garden shows in the RDS back at that time and win the gold medal. I had no aptitude for business, but wanting to do things different, needing to do it. This primal need to make gardens that were saying something different. It nearly destroyed me. And I remember at one stage, living in flatland in Rathmines and beginning to make a mess of everything. I remember Gay Byrne on the radio show. That was a big one. Listening to Ireland change in front of my eyes. The politicians, the Catholic Church, them ceding control, and then the world of arts
space opening up.
Yeah, and I made a mess of everything, and I was making a mess and making a laughing stock of myself within the industry, because started doing my work badly, bouncing checks, living in flatland, not being able to pay rent, losing everything. And there was a pivotal moment where I had to escape.
What was the breakthrough? The
breakthrough was a couple of things combined. One Friday evening, I remember being in the flat and a guy from the TV rentals company in Rathmines coming to repossess a stack system. It was £2 a month I was paying for this. I couldn't meet those, but I was penniless. And then the following day, my friend Vincent came on his bicycle and putting everything I have, which was my clothes, in 2 refuge sacks and balancing them on his crossbar, cycling away. And for somebody who was winning all the prizes, and leaving that flat because the landlord I had to leave. I hadn't paid the rent in God knows how long. And standing at the bus stop on Dame Street, waiting for the 16 to go to Rathfarnham, where the parents lived.
Going home to live with Mummy and Daddy, were you?
Terrible. Every year they'd come to celebrate me and the RDS winning gold again and blah, blah, blah. And here I am, friends, getting married, having kids, buying vans. Me with absolutely nothing, failure after failure. So that's what everything was.
And did you feel failure?
Oh, absolutely. Being prisoner of a dream. A few things happened then. There was a book, there was a gardening book reviewed in the Irish Times, and it was called Paradise Transformed, Private Gardens for the 21st Century. And in that book, it showed me that people with different ideas around the world were creating gardens that were different. So that was one thing. The second thing was, despite having nothing, I had a customer who would always sponsor me to do a garden back at the RDS. And I built my final garden in the RDS, and there was no appetite for anything new. So it was a rundown cottage from Achill Island, which had this beautiful purple stone, and a wild Irish landscape drifting in and out. Somebody passed that. A woman I knew, Finola Reid was her name, because she had been a gardener in the Botanic Gardens, and she turned to her friend, not talking to me, and she said, "That's almost Chelsea standard." And that's it. That's it. That's the escape. What is this Chelsea thing? Maybe I'll be able to do new ideas.
And you did.
And therein started a whole new chapter.
Yeah, it's a whole new chapter.
Yeah.
Put it together for us. Like, you're standing at the bus stop 1 minute and the buses are going by you and you're at your lowest point. And really, in a sense, you're alone with your genius and your dream.
Not genius. I had no genius.
You have genius.
I was a fantasist.
Yeah.
I was a fantasist who, again, had let people down. Letting people down was a big... letting friends down, letting parents down, letting family down, not living up to a mediocre talent for winning gold medals in flower shows, because I understand shape and proportion and soil and whatever. And flower shows are just flower arranging. You know, a garden of a flower, it's only flower arranging. We build it up to be something more than the sum of its parts. How did that happen?
You're a great man to knock yourself.
No, I'm not.
But you have great personal insight.
I'm a realist, I think, and I've learned to be a realist. But how did it happen? So I got my friend to ring this thing called the Royal Horticultural Society to find out who they were. And a week later, I went over on the boat, on the train, with this friend and found this address in central London, 80 Vincent Square, and a huge building near Victoria Station. I knocked on their door and I was sent up to shows department floor 3 by the porter. And eventually a guy came out and looked me up and down and asked what I wanted. He said, "You cannot wander in off the street and ask to build a garden." And I said, "What do you do?" He says, "You address a letter typed to Miss Mavis Sweetingham and you outline your achievements today, give examples of your work and say what you would like to do, and we'll consider it." And I left that place feeling tiny. Did you, Diarmuid? Because I'm just thinking, okay, he gave you these conditions, but you could fulfil them because you had your gold medals from the work that you'd already done. Yes, I could. And you had the bravery to go there. Yeah, I could fulfill them in a way, but when somebody's making you feel, when you go in, when you find out, look, you're the one who's always had a dream and everybody's told you get a job in the Parks Department.
Yes, exactly. Pensionable, permanent. And
listen to the sensible people. I went to cafe. I wrote a letter.
To the lady in question.
The lady in question. And hours later, I arrived back to the same building and it was closed. Aww. And I slipped the letter in, maybe under the door, maybe in the postbox, I don't know, and went home feeling stupid. And then maybe 6 months later, very curiously, a letter arrived at my parents' house where I wasn't living with no stamp on it. And inside was an application to submit a design for the competition for the following year's Chelsea Flower Show. This, to me, was Willy Wonka golden ticket. It was, and what would I do? This was unbelievable. I decided that I should give them a traditional Irish garden. I'd have a plan. Sent it off, waited and waited and waited, and cycling up the driveway for the hot meal once a week back home. There was a letter there from the RHS and ripped it open. Dear Mr. Gavin, unfortunately, you haven't been successful. And then repeating that 6 months later, that cycle up that driveway in Rathfarnham, Mum said, there's a woman from England, left a message, Mavis Sweetingham, will you ring her? I rang the number and she said, look, we really like that design and somebody's dropped out. Oh, cool. And we're just thinking maybe, but lots of problems because you'd only have 6 months now because that's 6 months and whatever. I said, please give me a chance. And she says, can you come over to see me? So the following week I went over to see her And she sat behind, in this same building, this big mahogany door. She had those half glasses. She was a solemn woman. She said, but you've no money. You'd need £60,000 then. You've no money. You've 6 months. I said, just give me the chance. Came back home. I'd met some people around that stage. First of all, a woman called Terry Keane, who was a very influential journalist and who was very kind to me. I had done her garden. And she really believed in me. She'd bring me in for chats and say, what are you up to and whatever. A few other people like that. I went to do an interview with Pat Kenny, the first media thing I'd ever done. And I was nearly sick outside the studio, just the nerves. And I went into Pat Kenny and he said, sure, if I had £60,000, I'd buy a red Ferrari. That garden in London is ridiculous and whatever. So what happened was I arrived over in London 3 weeks and 3 days before the Chelsea Flower Show, with 300 quid in my pocket, with no equipment, with myself and my friend, 2 suitcases, and I walked in through the gates of the Royal Hospital, and I went down to a plot, and there was a railway slipper with Gavin written on it, and a plot in front of me, and I had 300 quid, and I had a pile of stones in Lucan in Dublin that I'd bought, and I had plants that I had spent a few weeks digging up in Ballinskelligs in County Kerry, from fields, from hedgerows, from people with gardens. No place to stay, couldn't afford a place to stay, and then we ran out of money for food. So the last 3 days, no food. Coffee, granular coffee. But we got there, we got a garden built.
Did you get the stones delivered? Did the plants come? What happened?
Went to a place called Travis Perkins in Pimlico. Pimlico's very posh, full of, Art Deco antique shops. But there's a builders providers there. I bought wheelbarrow, 2 shovels, 2 spades. I asked for them to be delivered to the show site. They said, it's bank holiday weekend, mate, no deliveries. So I walked around Sloane Square down to the embankment and into the gates. With 2 shovels, 2 spades and 1 wheelbarrow. And we started digging. And we'd moved soil from one place to the other. Got a bit of money promised to me on the basis of that, borrowed a bit, but minuscule amounts of money. And in the last week, the stone arrived. And went to Kilburn, went to a pub, 2 stonemasons from Wexford. They live around the corner. And if you knock on the kitchen window, they came and they built the stone tower. And the plants arrived with about 3 or 4 days to go, and a cow had got in and pruned them for me. And people had never seen the like of plants.
The rawness of it in some ways. But
that's a good description.
And it came together, and we got a garden built, and we didn't eat and all sorts, but there was a garden there. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't great, and it wasn't terrible, and it had something.
It got you in.
We were in. And then everybody arrived. So Mum and Dad arrived. My brother, who is like, we're chalk and cheese, and I can't remember where he lived, what country he lived in. And Terry and Justine came over, and that was that. And not only that, we sold the garden for a couple of grand to a guy called Brophy, because he was an expat and he wanted the stone and he wanted the plants. So we had enough money to get home. And a few weeks afterwards, I used to teach these in the Sherry Fitzgerald auction room. And I used to teach these gardening classes. And there were 2 girls decades younger than anybody else in the class. So we'd go for a pint with them. Myself and Vincent, the lad who'd been with me, who had no interest in gardening, were telling them the story. And the girls were Anita Notaro and Ursula Courtney. And Ursula rang me the following day. She said, that story you told me last night, was that true? I said, yes. She says to me, I didn't tell you last night. I'm a researcher with the Late Late Show, and we've never had a gardener on. And there I was then on the Saturday evening, and we had got a bronze medal at the Chelsea Flower Show. Now, you get a bronze for turning up. For turning up, you get a bronze, and they give 7 or 8 bronzes, and they give 5 or 6 silvers and 7 or 8 silver gilts and 4 or 5 golds, and then a best of show. We got a bronze. But I said we got a bronze in the Late Late Show, and everybody thought we came 3rd. And we were away.
Brilliant! That's wonderful.
And the following
year, you were away.
Well, what was really interesting, there was a few lessons from that. because it was a class reunion every Christmas. And Christmas came and went, and nobody called me. And then one of the lads from college met up with him, and he said, "Oh yeah, no, we had our things, but the lads think you've gone above your station."
Oh my goodness.
So that was a massive lesson for me. Going on the Late Late Show was above, know your place. So the following year, I had a little bit of support, and I went back to the Chelsea Flower Show with my version of a contemporary garden. And as I was building this garden, which was based on the men's loo of the Pod nightclub in Dublin, and the Michael Jackson video of Billie Jean where he dances down and the street illuminates, and then what was termed new exotic planting and whatever. And as I was making this garden, I knew it was a disaster. The day of the awards came. There was no award. It's impossible not to get a medal at Chelsea. Impossible. There was a letter saying, go away.
I will view Chelsea very differently from now on. Everybody's coming on with medals.
So there was a letter saying, go away.
You're done here.
You're done here. Politely, in their way. Then the BBC were filming something, Young Gardeners at Chelsea this year. So that was to be the reward, getting on the BBC. And it was Alan Titchmarch who was filming it, so it was amazing. So he came along and I filmed the sequence, and Alan wasn't going to like this garden. Alan, I says, the garden lights up at night. He says, I'll come back at night. The production team, Annette Martin from BBC Pebble, she told me, I want you to stand there and I want you to stay tonight as it gets dark, and Alan won't be back, and I want you to say, where's Alan? He'll never know what he missed. And I said, I'm not saying that. That's very Irish, and I'm not doing that, and whatever. I don't know what. Whatever. She said, listen, son, I was born in Leinster Road in Rathmines in Dublin. You're saying that. And I said that just into their microphone, not. So I'm there in the hotel room, and Alan comes along, and he visits all the gardens that year at Chelsea. And the programme ends with Alan going into a Gertrude Jekyll garden, and there's a bed made of chamomile, and he goes to sleep on this chamomile, and he dreams of all the things he loves, a dream sequence, and the credits roll. You come back to me, Billy Nomite, standing in a garden that is beginning to light up, and my voice saying, where's Alan? He'll never know what he missed. But everybody in the room said that was cool. And I went to stand in front of my dreadful garden on Thursday morning, and there was a guy doing security outside the Chelsea Flower Show, and he said, you're that guy. And I said, what guy? That guy with that really cool garden last night on television. And it was a sensation.
There you go.
There were crowds around the garden, and nobody to that moment had asked me to do anything in my life. It was always, can I? And that day, I became the next big thing. And a week later, I was back in Kew Gardens doing my first pilot for a television series, comedy gardening quiz show. I was captain of one team. Alan was captain. Alan Titchmarch was captain of another thing. Your woman from To the Manor Born, who was so like my mother-in-law. Yeah. Within a month, I had my own series. And within a year, I'd worked for every broadcaster.
Oh, there you go. Isn't that amazing? And you know, I know that the gardening has been very important on television, but you've done other things as well, Diarmuid, Gavin.
Changing Times, the Allenwood Conversations.
Sponsored by the Meadowlands Hotel in Tralee.
This episode is sponsored by Boost Mobile.
It's James and Fuhad from Shits and Gigs podcast, and we're here to talk about Boost Mobile, the newest 5G network in the country.
With compelling deals for new lines, Boost Mobile makes it easy to switch today.
Boost Mobile's new network delivers customers the speed and service they'd expect from the big three, plus groundbreaking benefits you'd only get from a true challenger in the industry.
These include letting people try the network risk-free for 30 days and offering a $25 per month unlimited plan that's guaranteed to never go up in price. They have blazing fast 5G and plans for all the latest devices. Visit your nearest Boost Mobile store and find us online at boostmobile.com.
Will full coverage make me look cakey? Is my undertone neutral or is it cool? We get it. Finding the right foundation is hard. But with Il Makiage, it's easy to find your perfect match online, customized for your unique skin tone and coverage needs. Plus, with Try Before You Buy, you can try your full size at home for 14 days. With over 600,000 five-star reviews, this best-selling foundation is going viral for a reason. Take the Power Match quiz now at ilmakiage.com/quiz. ILMAKIAGE.com/quiz.
I didn't realise you'd done Strictly. And as somebody who was mortified doing Dancing with the Stars, did you enjoy it?
Strictly, Epi was born while I was doing Strictly, so that was the... And Strictly came...
This is your daughter?
Yeah. So Strictly came towards the end of our most frenetic year, crazy year. So huge things happening, and very challenging things too, living in London, then Epi being born. So that's what, and it was the second series of Strictly, so it wasn't as, it was kind of getting to be what it
Did you like it?
It was another, when I told my mum I'm doing a programme with Bruce, oh, he's okay. And even my father-in-law used to watch Come Dancing. So he thought that was okay, a reality show to do. So did I enjoy it? Yeah, I suppose. But I got to present Top of the Pops.
Whoa!
So that was kind of bigger for than Strictly. And I got to do everything and go everywhere. And so it was extraordinary. But Epi had been born.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, before Epi was born, you met your wife, and she is the daughter of Terry Keane. And it was through Terry that you met her, wasn't it?
Yes.
Because you designed Terry's garden.
And Terry had been so good to you in the days when things weren't good to you.
Terry was unbelievable. Terry was unbelievable. She saw that I was... She saw that I had something. And like anybody else, if she saw something... She was just brilliant. She was amazing. If an electrician went in, she lived in Ranelagh Road. If an electrician went in and the family was having dinner, the electrician was invited to sit down with them.
I think that's lovely.
It didn't happen. It just didn't happen. And then she was mad and crazy and brilliant, and the people you'd meet there, and if you could do something, she'd never let you go if you were useful or whatever. And if you could have so I was meeting all of a sudden artists and creators, and then Justine. And
how did that come about?
You became part of the family.
Okay.
You became, and then Terry said to me, look, everybody's left home. I'm here in this big house on my own. And if you've lost your van, you've nothing, I'll do a deal with you. He says, why don't you move in here? I have a brand new car. Drive me into work and collect me and take the car. And you start your business again from the basement. And I would prefer if somebody's in the house. Her 92-year-old mother was also in the house. So this brand new car, I would drive her into Middle Abbey Street every day.
She's a journalist. She was a journalist.
I'd collect her at 5 o'clock. Now, I would have that car filled with tons of boulders and plants and soil, and she wouldn't say a word. If I was a moment late, there'd be hell to pay. And then she might throw open the bedroom door. I remember one night throwing open the bedroom door. I said, Diarmuid, we're going out. And I said painfully shy. I remember the biggest movie star in the world at that time was Hugh Grant.
Yes.
And I remember going into some nightclub in Dublin with Terry at midnight because Hugh Grant was waiting to be introduced. And a week later, Alan Rickman, Brenda Fricker, Hugh Grant, everybody. She had no interest in Hugh Grant. Zero. She says, this young man, I believe you can't kiss. And he was a shrivelling wreck by the time she was done with him. And she was on to have some crack with Alan. But all the time it was, and this is my friend, and this is my friend, and this is my friend. And she was amazing. And then myself and her mum invited me to dinner one night. And invited Justin to dinner one night.
It's in the same house.
In the same house.
Yes.
And left.
Oh, no.
And her mum was
the matchmaker.
93, and it was defrosted fish fingers, and left, and the matchmaker, and that's how.
Oh, that's lovely. Gosh. Yeah. You've described Terry, I read somewhere, as rocket fuel. I mean, you described She really was, wasn't she?
She was amazing. Absolutely. She was a remarkable person, and I look forward to the day when the proper story is told, because then I lived everything with her through the great times to the really challenging times. But she was. So I'm the one moment that I'll never forget. So all of a sudden, I'm over in England, and this happens to me, and Terry was the big star, and then all of a sudden this...
You're the big star.
And in Britain, where she'd been born and brought up and everything like that. So she was amazed and thrilled and couldn't have been more supportive. But she was on her own back in this house again, because myself and Jessie Monroe... And she rang me one day and she said, Diarmuid, I have a real problem. I think in the shed below, I think there's somebody in the shed, and I think there's somebody living in the shed. And, you know, she wasn't young. Big house, old house, and she was scared. She was vulnerable. So I said, look, I'll get a friend of mine to go down and see. So my friend Sean went down and knocked on her door, and they both went down to the garden and the shed, and indeed there was all the signs that somebody was living there. Sean says, do you want me to put a lock on it and whatever, and put a lock on the gate? And I said, no. Sean, come with me. And they went down to SuperValue in Ranelagh Village. Now, the newspapers, Sean, that were in that shed, I think he'll eat tuna sandwiches. Because there was the Telegraph there. I think he'll eat tuna sandwiches. And rather than kick him out, whoever it was,
She fed him.
And had nothing, and let. Yeah. So that shows who she was. Mm-hmm.
She had a rough press, didn't she? I mean, there was the whole Charlie High thing. There was the late stuff.
We lived all of that in degrees of tragedy and hilarity and everything like that.
Did it hurt her, all that stuff? Because she always seemed to be a person who had a really big defence mechanism. But that isn't always the way in reality, is it?
She was naughty. She came to Ireland with her own rules. She lived life. She arrived in Ireland in the kind of 60s, I suppose, with a very beautiful, very witty, very intelligent. She came to study to be a doctor. And she was going to live on her terms with no apologies. And indeed,
which is not the Irish way.
Which is not the Irish way. But she also wasn't going to... Oh, I remember a brilliant story. One of my favourite stories about her was a friend of hers was having an affair, or she thought that her husband was having an affair. So she asked Terry, would you go? And I know he's meeting his girlfriend in this bar, in this whatever. Would you go, and would you come back, and would you report? Would you be in the bar, and would you come back and report? And Terry went, and she sat, and she watched, whatever, and she decided that the person, the girlfriend, was much more interesting than her mate.
Oh, no.
So she became friends with Tanya. And that was that. So she had a different take on things, did things her way. She wasn't going to take the hypocrisy of Ireland and whatever, and she was misled and badly treated and celebrated and whatever. And did it hurt? Yes, dreadfully. But she had an amazing family, adored her family, her kids, and was adored by lots of people. But it was a terrible time. It was a bit like, remember what Ireland did to people like Sinead O'Connor in a very different way, and that was done to Terry, but kind of Terry, no apologies and no explanations, and felt everything, felt it all. Yeah. And it was always...
You must miss her terribly, though.
Yeah, terribly. But her spirit, Eppie knew her as a little one. Yeah. Mum and her did not get on in it, and then... Oh, actually, it wasn't
Your mum and her?
my mum had inverted snobbery about her. You know, and then they used holiday together, and because Justin said, this is really silly because you two would be, and indeed they were. So yes, but such is life. Yeah.
And Diarmuid, tell us about Justine.
Justine is...
She works with you. You've got a very, I mean, just an incredibly close relationship, and she seems very calm and...
Yes. Yeah, Justine is amazing.
Quiet.
She's very different, elegant, calm, quiet, funny.
Elegant, that's a lovely word to describe her.
She's so elegant. It just very different. She's that, I suppose, that combination of her mum and dad, but very private, very, very private. So not like that, and wants nothing. God help her. Meeting somebody with dreams, or somebody who liked material possessions, or somebody who wanted to go places and do things once. It was, you know, it was her mum. You know, the guy in the shed is as important as anybody. So you value the person, really moved by literature and music, all of that. She's amazing. She's
home, family.
Epi, central to everything, but living a good life, decent.
How old is Epi now?
Epi's 20.
Oh, wow.
What's she doing? Is she a gardening person?
No, definitely not. No. When Epi was, you know, with a granny like Terry, with a granddad like Ronan, with a granny like my mum, all of those things, with somebody with a dad maybe like me who had seen everything that happened to Ireland and grow up and question everything, question authority. Takes after Justine, very private and very, but such hard. The kids these days, I presume she's had about 10 jobs at this stage. Nothing will stop her getting out, working in the restaurant, doing this, doing that. Saving, not like me, and incredibly strong. So yeah, wonderful.
Oh, that's very nice. Yeah.
And does she live at home with you and Justine?
She'd rather not.
No, but wouldn't they all?
Yeah,
even at 40, wouldn't they all?
She will do. So I think every job she does is that escape money.
The running away money.
Running away money.
We can't not mention the Sky Garden with which you won the gold medal in Chelsea. There was a certain amount of controversy when it was brought back to Cork, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah, there was, yeah.
I mean, the concept was really interesting. Tell us about the innovation there.
The controversy was very challenging and not based on what the real story was. I think, I can't remember what year it was, maybe 2011. So I created a garden in exactly the same place that my first garden, where that railway station, back in Chelsea. And this was to be an Irish garden. It was very ambitious. It was inspired by, I was making a television series called Blood of the Irish about the Irish genetics, and I was hiking up to a cave in mountains in Sligo where bear bones had been found, and I saw these moss-covered rocks which were velvety and green, and I wanted to recreate that, the hundreds of shades of green that we have in terms of textures. And then I wanted a little bit of that kind of magic thing, so a pavilion that would fly up into the sky. You could go into this pavilion, sit on these benches, it would rise out of the ground, and you'd get a new impression of not only the garden, but the whole of the Chelsea Flower Show. Why not have a flying garden? So there was controversy about it because it was sponsored with public money. And I think what mixed up, it got involved with the redevelopment of a park in Cork where they were spending a couple of million, maybe.
Fitzgerald
Park. And people thought that the couple of million had gone...
Oh, yes, to your Sky Garden.
To the Sky Garden. Yeah. In fact, as with every garden I've created, the Chelsea Flower Show, I lost money on it. So no millions went over to a good investment with the medal and with the profile all around the world. Ireland is green.
But in and of itself, it wasn't putting money in your pocket.
No. And if it had been, great.
All the better for it.
That would have been great, because we shouldn't shy away from that, and we should pay artists and creators and whatever. But no money, no plants, but it got caught up in one of the
Allenwood Conversations.
When this media
Sponsored by the
stuff
Meadowlands
happens,
Hotel in Tralee.
there's nothing you can do to stop it. I had a South African friend over. I'd done work in South Africa, and I remember driving around Ballinskelligs with him and Joe Duffy, turning on the radio. It was a week after Chelsea, because he'd come over. And you are the main topic of, and there's nothing you could. So what I eventually did was, I did Freedom of Information Act to get all the things. And what could anybody? So the journalists have very small paragraphs in these things. Diarmuid Gavin did the Freedom of Information, and it turns out not only did he, and all the plants and hopefully some of the imagination were used down in the redevelopment, but. So be it. That's what you have to. And wasn't I lucky to get the opportunity?
Oh, yeah.
Wasn't it wonderful? It wasn't luck won you the medal, though.
No, that's true.
Yeah,
that's some
so
innings.
true.
I mean, you're looking at a long
the garden was good, but then we give value to the medal. And I've never believed in giving value to those medals, because it's easy to win a gold medal at the Chelsea Flower Show. It's a formula. Our bloom, it's a formula. Just go and do what the judges want.
But you've stepped away from that now.
No, not at all. I haven't done a garden in a long time, because then COVID came along. But I've one garden that's been on the drawing board for about 15 years, and it's massive, and I'll get into so much trouble over it, and it's been accepted by Chelsea.
Okay.
But I have more to get out. I would be unusual in that I've done so many gardens, maybe 8 or 9 or 10, but no, certainly more to do.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the day, just to sort of shift the topic a little bit, back when we'd all the Ukrainian refugees coming to Ireland, you opened your home?
We did, yeah.
So was it a mother and daughter?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah, we did. They were with us for a year.
What was that like, having strangers living in your home? Who were presumably very traumatised people too?
I would say, yes, very traumatised. I would say that's back to Terry. Her home was always open.
Yes.
And that's always been mine. Principle. My family were always very welcoming. Mm-hmm. So I think it was just a natural progression if something needs to be done. And I think we're about to do it again. And I had worked in the Ukraine, I'd lectured in the Ukraine, and I've worked in Russia, and I have people who work with me who live in Russia. So it's a deeply complex world. Opening the house was not particularly easy, and we learnt a lot that time, and they were lovely people, and they brought a little fecker of a dog. He was,
and you've your own dog.
Yeah.
You know, from hearing your story from the beginning, where you were a shy boy, and all of the kind of the setbacks that you had, and the success that you have now, Diarmuid, and the very good, happy family life. How do you view life now?
As a challenge. I view it the same way I viewed it when I was losing my flat in Ranelagh. I think it's very important to keep perception a certain way. I think it's a game, so I think it's quite okay that you're private about things, and that things about you mightn't be the way people think they are. I've had the most unbelievable adventure. I've been able to go to a different country and bring my mum. Mum loved Tony Blair, so I've been able to bring my mum to meet Tony Blair on Downing Street. I have partied in Buckingham. I've done it all. And I've had all those doors open and had surreal experiences. But the reality of life is very different, and I view life as I've been lucky, but keep working, keep the head down, and keep dreaming, and keep trying to get through the problems and the issues.
And if you had one thing you'd change in the entire world, in your own life even, if there was one thing that you're passionate about changing, what would it be?
I would encourage young people I just thought the things that held us back, whether it was through Brendan O'Regan showing us through what he did at Shannon Airport and the trade-free zones, which ended up changing China, and a very humble man, right the way through to the schoolmates saying, you've gone above yours. I would just encourage. And I've seen Ireland change in remarkable ways, in just remarkable ways. So I'd be filled with hope. I see Epi and her boyfriend, and they fill me with hope.
Well, now, Mary, I have to say, after listening to Diarmuid Gavin there, I'm feeling inspired to head home, dig out the gardening gloves and get down and dirty. A big thank you to our producer here at Dundara Television and Media in County Kildare, that's Enda.
And of course, I'm going to go home and say to Martin, I was just talking to Diarmuid Gavin there, and he says this is what you should be doing. But a big thank you to our brilliant researcher, Anne-Marie Staunton, to our wonderful sponsor, the Meadowlands Hotel in Tralee, in the stunning Kingdom of Kerry.
Don't forget, listeners, please, to subscribe, to comment and rate Changing Times wherever you get your podcasts. It really helps us to reach more listeners far and wide.
So until the next time, from all of us here in Allenwood, County Kildare, slán slán. Changing Times, the Allenwood Conversations.
Sponsored by the Meadowlands Hotel in Tralee.
To make switching to the new Boost Mobile risk-free, we're offering a 30-day money-back guarantee.
So why wouldn't you switch from Verizon or T-Mobile?
Because you have nothing to lose. Boost Mobile is offering a 30-day money-back guarantee.
No, I asked why wouldn't you switch from Verizon or T-Mobile?
Oh.
Wouldn't.
Because you love wasting money as a way to punish yourself because your mother never showed you enough love as a child?
Whoa. Easy there.
Yeah.
Applies to online activations. Requires port in and auto pay. Customers activating in stores may be charged non-refundable activation fees.
Hey, it's Mark Marin from WTF here to let you know that this podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. And I'm sure the reason you're listening to this podcast right now is because you chose it. Well, choose Progressive's Name Your Price tool, and you could find insurance options that fit your budget, so you can pick the best one for your situation. Who doesn't like choice? Try it at Progressive.com. And now, some legal info. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.